What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. On today's video, we're talking about Solana and going to be reporting on its fund flow report that we just saw, talking about what institutional investors are doing, as well as talking about a hack that we did see just a couple days ago, and some pretty big information that we're getting from some of the bigger influencers in the space. So with that said, let's not waste any more time at all, and let's get straight into today's video. Now, looking at Solana had a pretty solid week in terms of inflows and outflows from institutional investors and hedge funds. We can see here that Solana had a 0.7 weekly inflow, which equals about $700,000 of net inflows. Now, obviously, some people did buy, some people did sell, but whenever you have a 0.7 or a positive inflow, it means more people bought than they sold. Now, when we compare this to the other cryptos, especially those in the top 10, this was a pretty good week. When we look at something like Bitcoin, it had a negative 17.5 weekly outflow, meaning that we saw over $17 million flowing out of Bitcoin just from this one fund flows report from their assets under management. Now, whenever you think about it, right, we did have inflation data, we had the Fed meeting. It's not too surprising because a lot of these hedgies are a little bit weak-handed right now. They would rather sell it and be wrong than not sell it and be wrong. And so with that said, we have been seeing a lot of outflows from them around event time. So I will be curious to see what this week's inflow and outflow report does look like, to see if they do a little bit more accumulating now that we're behind, we're past that and that behind us. Now, looking at Ethereum did have its fifth consecutive negative week here, in which this week totaled $9.1 million. We can see here that ETH's outflows this year represent a substantial 7.3% of assets under management, which just goes to show that a lot of people are starting to consider outflowing their Ethereum, getting rid of their Ethereum. Now, not super surprising here, especially considering the fact that Ethereum had a bit of a decent run up here. Ethereum saw a little bit of growth, so some people were taking profit off of the accumulations that they were doing down here. So I wouldn't say necessarily surprising, but it is something to pay very close attention to because you want to see Ethereum holding strong, of course. Now, multi-asset negative 1.9, not too crazy. Binance negative 1.1. Also a little surprising for me. I was expecting a little bit more of outflows, especially considering all of the Binance FUD that's been going around the last couple days. But with that, of course, these institutional investors may know something we don't, and they don't seem to be too worried about it because they're not really removing it from, their holdings as much right now. Short Bitcoin up 1.1, which is no surprise with the negative Bitcoin week. Solana at a 0.7, meaning that we saw Solana have a $700,000 net inflow, which is always good. It's pretty impressive, especially considering things like Ether down 9 million, Binance down 1.1, overall having net negative weeks versus a net positive week for Solana, especially after it's fallen 90 to 95%, definitely stands out to me. And continuing on here, we can see XRP did have a negative $300,000 week, and then Polygon had a break-even week. So overall, in comparison to the rest, in terms of what these hedge funds are doing, Solana is standing out right now. They seem to be outperforming, and it seems as if there is a little bit of favor leaning towards Solana, even though its price is down, like I said, like 90 to 95% over the last couple months here. So definitely something to pay attention to. Now, one thing that I will say is we need to pay very close attention to next week's report. The reason I say that is because I don't really think that the hack that we saw on Radium is going to have impacted the report that we just got. Now, the reason I say that is because we did see a hack from Radium in which we saw $2.2 million being drained from liquidity, with $1.6 million of that being Solana. Now, it's not the most amount of money, especially in comparison to what we've seen from some other cryptos, right, with hundreds of millions of dollars having been stolen. But whenever you think about where Solana is right now and the state that it's in right now, and you mix that in with the fact that this was an attack on liquidity pools, which also impacted other people using that protocol and using that liquidity pool or farm or whatever, that just goes to show that there could be more of a widespread impact from this. One thing we did see, which is a little bit concerning about this whole thing, if we do go up here a little bit more, initial understanding is owner authority was overtaken by attacker, but authority has been halted on AMM, and that kind of makes people question the security and the safety of the protocol itself, right? If owner authority was a thing being attacked, it's like, how did they get access to that, right? They're not saying it's a rug pull. No one's really accusing it of that right now, but almost as if, how did this happen and will it happen again? Those fears start to kind of resonate with people, and you start to see the outflows start to occur even more and more. So to me, with an attack of this nature, it will be interesting to see if these hedge funds and institutional investors do start to pull back on, their accumulating on Solana, or maybe even start to outflow on their Solana more substantially than they are now. So very interesting to see. I would pay very close attention to next week's report, and do stay tuned on this channel because we're going to go over it every single week. Now, overall though, with that said, Maybe not the most bullish week for Solana in terms of the hack having happened, but nothing really substantial is going on with the price here. We are still bouncing between this range of our range low of $10 and about 80 cents, and then our range high sitting right around $15. And we've gone sideways in this level for quite a while. Now, generally speaking, you don't really have a way to gauge what is going to happen here. You know, there are times where we'll come back down here, we'll go sideways a bit, we'll bounce out, we'll find a high, come back down, put in a double bottom, and then start to look to grow, right? There is always that opportunity. Or something like this, right, in which we put in the cup and handle pattern and then we see growth. But there are also times in which we will see something like this, where this is a bear flag and then we see the continuation of the downtrend. There is no way to just predict what is going to happen here. But for me, I don't really quite understand why we would see some type of strong growth at this point, right? I know Solana developers are continuing to build. I know we are seeing recovery going pretty smoothly. The FTX situation is kind of simmering down a little bit, so maybe people aren't as worried right now in the short term. And so because of that, we could see a little bit of a bounce and a rally, because again, we have to pay attention to the fact that these institutional investors are buying for a reason. But right now, I don't quite see that reason. And to me, it seems with things like this Radium hack happening and the crypto market itself being a little bit more shaky the last few days, unless we see a big run up in price for something like Bitcoin, maybe back to $18,000, $19,000, I'm really not quite sure why Solana would see a substantial amount of growth in the short term. It would almost not surprise me more to see more sideways movement, maybe a capitulation, and then some growth here. Now, there are still some people who are pretty excited about Solana, even in the short term. Raul Paul did go forward and said, I'm really interested in Solana because I think the team is exceptional in what they're doing. What they're doing is building a consumer chain. Now, there are a lot of naysayers about it. It's down 95%. It got caught out in the whole FTX thing, but I think it's clean now because they all had to sell. So now you got this chain with retail adoption, doing deals with Meta, Google, and all sorts of others. They've just done a deal with Discord as well, and I expect more to come from them. I think they've really understood where their piece is. Having a store in Manhattan selling Solana merch is great in the mobile phone. Who knows where that goes? But I think they're unlocking something big. And so there are people who are still optimistic about the short-term future of Solana with the development they're doing, because they've allegedly flushed out those bad players in their ecosystem. But I still personally need to see a little bit more convincing before I'm confident doing a lot of buying on Solana. I think if we're capable of breaking $15, that will be a big sign that some type of short-term rally, maybe even back up towards 20, is going to happen. So there could be a pretty decent long trade to make here, but I would be very, very careful right now and paying very close attention to how all of these external factors are shifting, because they will give us an idea of what we can expect from Solana over the next couple of weeks here. So with that said, I'm paying very close attention to this. My range is still sitting between $15 and $10.90. Whichever one of these we break first, that's the direction we're going. Obviously, I'm saying we can go up or we can go down. I don't have a crystal ball. My goal here is not to be right. My goal is to be prepared. And while we are within this range, I am simply just preparing for the move out of this range. So I will keep you guys as up to date as possible with Solana, how it's playing out, and all of the news that does come out. And all you simply need to do is smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another video. But with that said, that's about it for me, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.